Welcome to the Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets. I'm John Blake, and today I am really excited because I have got Matt Griggs on the show with me. Matt is a performance coach. He's an ex-professional surfer, and he has actually worked with one of the world surfing champions, Mick Fanning, as well as Stephanie Gilmore, Owen Wright, and he's worked with a number of NRL players and many other elite athletes. And he's also a teacher of a unique meditation called Keely meditation. So really excited to have Matt on the show with us this morning. And so more about Matt in a minute, but in the meantime, if you have got a whole bunch of leads in your funnel and you want to convert more of those leads, I have got a perfect resource for you. It is over at johnblakeaudio.com, and what you get is a audio training where I walk you through the precise strategy that you can use to double sales with your existing lead flow. So this is the exact same strategy that I teach my high-ticket clients. It works really, really consistently once you put it in place. I've never seen it not work. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com, download the audio training. But what you'll also get is the PDF companion guide that has the exact email follow-up templates, exactly what to say on the phone when you are leaving a message, what to say when you actually get through to somebody, and the actual framework on how often to contact over an 8-week period to convert more of those leads that didn't say yes in the first conversation into paying clients. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com and grab that right now. Okay, so welcome. I've got Matt with me, Matt Griggs, and super excited to get into today's discussion. Bit of background about Matt. He is a mind and high performance coach hailing from Sydney. He's a former professional surfer. He has coached world champions, including Mick Fanning and Stephanie Gilmore. He's also published 2 best-selling books. And he's also worked with Owen Wright, who's a current tour professional surfer, as well as a number of NRL players and many other elite athletes. So in addition to that, Matt also teaches a unique meditation called Keely meditation. And I'm going to certainly be asking him about that, that helps people detach from disharmonious thoughts and emotions so that they can distill their natural ability to its purest point. He has a 360-degree view of performance and brings his deeper understanding of health, happiness, and high performance to everybody that he works with, from professional athletes to businessmen. Lives in Cronulla with Kate, and they have 2 little boys. And when he's not teaching, he is studying it himself. So it's always good to be your own best example of your own best advice. Not always easy, I might add. But Matt, welcome, mate. Anything else that we should be adding to your background there to sort of paint the rest of the picture?
Hey, John. Yeah, thanks for having me. No, that's pretty good. Just to on top of your last point, yeah, you can't teach what you're not living yourself or what you don't understand yourself. So it's a good self-corrector, that's for sure, to understand things first before you set about teaching. Otherwise, it just becomes an opinion, and there's enough of that in the world, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's that, that other saying that I love, which is you can't give away what you don't already have.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Well, if you look closely, we live in a world of mostly opinions, and I think it would be great for the world to understand that there's a difference between understanding something and thinking you do, which is, an opinion is more how you would like it to be or how you think it is. But this is more about understanding, in my case, self-understanding. So, like where your skills are, and in a performance sense, you know how your mind works and how life is, and then you can work with it in a way that is not only more conducive of performance, but just happiness and, good interactions with the world, etc. So, it all comes down to understanding, and problems come from not.
Yeah, exactly. I love. I heard Seth Godin say something that really resonated with me. He said, if if you can't swim yourself, you're a lousy lifeguard.
Yep.
I love that.
Totally.
Cool.
Doesn't stop people being lifeguards, though, does it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, there's lots of lifeguards who are not particularly good swimmers, but that's probably another slightly more judgmental conversation. So look, there's a stack that I want to get stuck into with you today, but I thought I'd start with, so as a performance coach, you're coaching business people, you're coaching athletes, you're helping them to bring out, the best in how they're performing, I guess not just in their sporting pursuit, but in the greater part of their life. What are the three biggest problems that your clients come to you with that you can help them solve?
Well, this is probably, I guess anyone could relate to this, but for the most part, because I deal with some fairly elite people in whatever their pursuit is, they're generally going okay or very good already with their performance, but probably living in some unnecessary stress or, I don't know, haven't got their physical health where they want it to, or they might have some level of suffering or some just have a lot of curiosity where they want to learn more. So there's a lot of drivers of why people come, but the main things to help with is we break it down, because I try to coach holistically, where I understand all the things or all the influences of our health, our happiness, and in this case, our performance. So for me, there has to be an understanding of, like, first of all, the mind and just at least physical health. So these are some of the problems that people might have. Because if you're an easy way to understand what compromises performance is really fear or fatigue. So if someone's in a position of stress, then they're not going to be performing or certainly living as well as they can. If they have fatigue because they don't know how to take care of their physical body as well as it can potentially run, then they run into problems and, they compromise their performance. So for me, the problem is also solution is learn to optimize physical health, so you can better support your performance, learn to clear the mind and to make the mind have more awareness and less stress. And then where do we want to direct that in terms of what kind of life that you want to live? So have a bit more self-awareness around who you are and get a bit of purpose there. And that obviously puts a bit more spring in the step, because, I think some of the problems with the world where there's a lot of instruction out there or a lot of know-how on the way. But, the saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. There's not too much instruction on actually coaching the will. So for me, that's got to be the most important part, and the biggest problem to solve is to make someone's will very strong, to make it very aware, and to have less stress in it. And then the two secondary things would be getting their physical health right and also getting their performance right, where they're realizing their potential and experiencing it.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of a very sort of simple equation. It's like your performance equals your potential subtracted by the interference.
Yes. Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it, John? Because you it's not just what you do, but that is important, but what you do not do. So this came up very recently with one of my executives, because most of my work these days is with executives, like vast majority, probably 80-90% of it, coaching them one-on-one. And he's in finance, and I said people probably don't realize, but it's the decisions you say no to that were probably the biggest influencer in your success, not just what you say yes to. Because no one really comes up to you today and says, what are you not going to do today? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There has to be some self-awareness around what is it, that is in line with who I am as a person, with, your values and your self-understanding of who it is that you are and what it is that you want to achieve, and making sure your decisions are aligned with that. So if you don't do the work in self-awareness, then you can start to make decisions that take you off course, and therefore that's where the confusion starts coming in and we get problems outwardly. So it all needs to start with that self-understanding.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, I know personally, I it's taken me a long time to work this out, but I can be stressed out about something and have absolutely no awareness that it's affecting me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I could just be functioning normally and there could be something stressing me out and I have no awareness that that's what's happening. And then suddenly it'll just manifest in, like perhaps, I'll get a headache or something like that. And then, it'll be my wife who'll say, "Oh, are you stressing out about such and such?" I mean, lucky that I don't get too stressed out about too many things too often, but when I do, sometimes it can take me a while to sort of go, "Oh yeah, well maybe I am."
Totally. Well, it's the self-awareness that allows for self-correction, for course.
Yes, exactly.
So this is where, like, the one of the basic principles that we need to start with, individually and therefore collectively with the world is to start becoming more consciously aware. Because when you're consciously aware, you know what you're doing while you're doing it, which is just a miraculous thing. But believe it or not, that's sort of like the kindergarten of the mind, is to first awaken your conscious awareness, so you are paying attention in life, and that you can not just run on, like so many people do, on the autopilot of the brain, which becomes without direction or without awareness from mind. We can start to just follow programs that might have been inherited from parents or our culture or whatever, that can run without real awareness, which becomes a block. So again, we need to look at what's helping and what's not, and what's adding to your life and what isn't. And for the most part, that's some of the problems that I help my clients solve, and mostly they're aware of. But is where are they interfering with themselves? Where do they get in their own way, and how do we get rid of not just these subconscious ways of being, but how do we get rid of fear, which certainly compromises, considering the only real fear is when you're actually in danger. And how do we get rid of belief systems and anything like that just interferes with performance and happiness and just living an amazing life.
Yeah. I don't know whether you've noticed this because, obviously you're working with a lot of executives, but from a leadership standpoint, what I often find is that, very similar to the way that we're programmed, by what we see, hear and feel when we're growing up. What I've noticed is that the same applies from a leadership and from a management perspective. I often see people that will lead or manage in the same way that they were led and managed in their first role, or in the role that they spent the most amount of time in their career.
Yes.
If they're not taught any other frameworks or principles around leadership or management, it becomes like parenting. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, this becomes the autopilot because they're leaning off previous experience, but you can train your mind to see a better way in real time always. And then you've got a choice. Do I move into new territory, or do I default to what I already know? So this would be technically what we'd call a comfort zone, or often an uncomfort or discomfort zone, because it doesn't work. But they don't know any other way, so they just keep doing what they've always done. The danger of that is whatever you practice, you get better at. So if you've been practicing a dysfunctional way and you keep practicing, then you're actually getting better at that. So again, there needs to be some conscious awareness around, maybe there's a better way. And I feel like if people are constantly asking this question, that's the first thing. And they need to be open to what works and what doesn't work. And while there may be some examples, or, like we call a precedent in the world beyond the parent structure where most of these habits are first formed, we want to open their mind in a way where they can see things beyond what even other people have seen before. So you can begin to lead and inspire people in your own unique way. And it becomes so much more inspiring, because what everyone's looking for is really that freedom in their own self-expression, and uh, to have someone worth following that is a good leader, because they people not only respect the knowledge and the skill that they're putting forth, but also how they're handling themselves mentally. They have a freedom to them, they have a fearlessness to them, and for me, they're one of the, or two of the greatest things I've noticed in some of the most, I don't know, elite seems a bit elitist in language, but the people that are doing very well in life, whether it's in sport or in business, they just seem to have more awareness and less fear. And to me, that's just so worth following and inspiring. They have the awareness to know what to do. They have the awareness of the outward environment. They have the awareness of who they are as a person or who they are as a company. And they have the fearlessness to just get it done and not, fear result, not fear what people think about them, which become big blocks.
Yeah, there's so much that's that we can talk to about that. I mean, the I guess the most obvious evidence of that is where you see a team that's been struggling for years and years and years, and suddenly they change the coach, and then that team starts winning again, and nothing changed other than the fact that they've got a new person who's calling the shots, and the team can pretty much remain the same, and suddenly they start winning again.
Yes.
There's so much evidence of that, but there's such a lot around just that awareness of your own of how you tick. Is understanding how you tick, because it's so easy to blindly decide that you're going to be like someone else when they've got a whole other set of they've got a whole different set of values and a totally different makeup in terms of who they are and their style. I mean, just like everybody has their own way of dealing with drama, everyone also has their own way of dealing with in a leadership type role. But like you say, there's that congruence, that alignment of, okay, I'm aware of who I am, and I have some an ability to be able to zoom out and really see the bigger picture and make calls with confidence, knowing that there's a very good, having that confidence to know that there's a good chance that I'm going to be right, even, and also having the awareness that there's a chance that I might be wrong as well, but being comfortable about that, either outcome, knowing that I've made the right call, whether it's right or wrong. you know what I mean? Like there's that energy that comes off really good leaders that I've certainly sensed.
Totally, yeah. They tend to back themselves a little more, and yeah, that's right. Because it's this, and we're seeing it in the world right now with the coronavirus thing. Is that fear is to me is so infectious, and I see it with some of the coaches that I've worked with, that are leading organizations, is or even at business level, is they coach or they teach from a place of fear. That is not a way to inspire people, like a fear of losing or a fear of making a mistake. And it happens sometimes because people like when you're in a fear, if people are in their ego, for example, which is really an instinctual self-protection response.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to be very competitive, and it likes to, always be the top dog, etc. So it tends to not be a good place to lead from, because it belittles people, and it's just not a good place to lead from. So again, it is important for people to evolve out of these, states, psychological states where they're running on autopilot, or they're distracted very, very easily, or they're running on fears, whether they're conscious or sub or unconscious, and start to be very aware of what it is that they're working with in the second point of their experience, like people, places, and things. And more importantly, understand where they're working from. And to me, that is where success is, because if you look very closely, there is really just you and everything else. So the more you understand about everything else, which is just comprised of people, places, and things, the more you know what you're working with. Things like a system, things like a phone, things like, other processes that you might use in terms of the business. People, obviously, it's very helpful to understand your fellow human beings, so you can lead them, you can inspire them, what adds to them, what subtracts to them. But I think I know that we tend to live in a world that has just become too second pointed in their experience, where there is so much knowledge on everything else, but unfortunately, we miss the point being you, because everything else is really just the object of your attention, all these things that you're experiencing outwardly. But the subject here is you.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself? How is it that you're evolving? Where is it that you're getting in your own way? And where do these fears originate inside of you? And how can you detach from them? So that's a lot of what I'm about is not only becoming with people, because I've just sort of gone on that pathway myself, is not just becoming more aware, but just, to lose a colloquial term, dealing with our shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's one thing we've all got in common. We've all got stuff,
Yeah.
and if we're not careful, that stuff can infect other people, and that can be very careless. So, our greatest, gift to other people, I think, is not only spreading awareness, but not spreading, our stuff.
But it's also being aware of our stuff.
Yes.
It's like there's awareness, and then there's being aware of our stuff, so that and that's the thing, is like people go, oh well, I've dealt with all of that. It's like, well, yeah, you have, but it's still there.
So in that case, they haven't.
You've just got to be aware of it.
Because we live in this world where we've got a name for that stuff now. The name is anxiety, or it's depression, or it's autistic, or whatever it is. But people tend to, unfortunately, wear this sometimes as an excuse or a badge of honor. Like, I've got an excuse for being a bitch now because I have anxiety. But it's we all have dysfunction to a certain degree, and this is something that, it's unfortunate, but it is just, the human condition um, is flawed, until we complete ourselves, and we achieve our freedom on a spiritual level. But until then, we are sort of flawed. So we want to do as little damage as possible to our fellow human beings and to ourselves.
Yeah.
And limit as the suffering, because there's going to be challenges in life, that is for sure. And this is why stress happens. Stress happens quite literally because we can't handle a certain situation in life. So if someone doesn't feel like they can handle something, then they stress and they internalize emotion, and then this emotion gets stuck inside, and now they've become unstable, and they're carrying a weight inside, and habits form off these stresses, and they start practicing those habits, and all of a sudden one reaction or one mood has become a temperament, has become their part of their personality, and all originating in unrealistic fear, because they just didn't have the mental awareness to know how to be in a certain situation. So the goal is not just learning how to do things better, but how to be better, because we are dualistic as creatures, right? There's our doing nature and there's our being nature. So how do we bring these two worlds together where you're not only doing amazing things, but you're being an amazing person? To me, that's a leader that is worth following.
Yeah. So we've talked about awareness. We've talked about being mindful of who you're being, as well as what you're doing. Are there some other simple things that, or perhaps not that simple things, that listeners can do to set themselves up for better or higher performance, or for high performance in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Do the time inwardly, so a lot of my program, it starts, like, I didn't even look at goals until session 4, and up until then it's just, basic introduction to the mind and how the mind works. So to me, that's got to be the most important thing. And I do that via the Keely and understanding Keely meditation, which we can get into next if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, and then getting a good base level of physical understanding and how the mind-body connection works. So I go through the anatomy of the mind, and then some basic things with the body to get, some breathing exercises and understanding of how sunlight, nutrition, sleep, recovery, and exercise can bring about greater health.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're running better on a physical and a mental level, now let's bring more awareness to who it is that we are, what kind of life that we want to live, and just asking those questions of yourself, who it is that you are and how you want to live, and then go after that fearlessly. That to me is success, is going after what it is that you really want to experience in life, and without fear.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, so tell me a little bit more about Keely. What makes it different from other types of meditation?
Two things. First of all, it's meditation has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and the whole point behind meditation is to become more aware and less stressed. Its original definition means to be at one. So earlier I spoke about there are 2 points to everything in life. There's what you're conscious of, which is the second point of your experience. And then there's where you're conscious from, which is the primary point of your experience. And meditation, to be at one, means to bring your mind into one still point of awareness, because you don't do still, you be it. So it's a real meditation technique. It's difficult, but it's a true meditation technique in the original sense of the word, because there's many other techniques out there that are very good for the immune system, very good for relaxing, very good for the relaxing the nervous system, etc. But they tend to be born in a doing. So in doing so, they become concentration techniques because you're focusing on something else, like breathing or a mantra or sounds or something else. So it's hard to learn about yourself when you're focusing on something else. So it's a true meditation technique because you bring your mind into one still point. In doing so, you learn detachment, which is what leads to your freedom. Look at detachment as a mind that is open to everything and affected by nothing. I mean, talk about goals. That's a pretty solid goal. Because if you're going to, play at A grade, your mind needs to be able to become aware of everything without being affected by it. Because as soon as you're affected, you're not making good decisions anymore. So we train our mind to be open to everything and affected by nothing, by detachment. So you've got this simple technique that only lasts 5 minutes, and then after the practice, we contemplate. So you journal and you record, in a personal journal, how you're experiencing life, where your blocks are, what your awarenesses are, what your realizations are, etc. So you've got a simple technique, and then you've got some basic principles to go with. What I mean by that is some anatomy to the mind. So quite simply, that's just, first of all, understanding your conscious awareness. That's just wherever you direct your attention is where your conscious awareness will be. As I said earlier, that means you know what you're doing while you're doing it. So you become more consciously aware. Then you learn the difference between thinking and feeling. The brain associated with thinking is more to do with the intellect, the analyzation process, the comparison process, measuring, comparing the linear world, whereas mind and mind function is more to do with the nonlinear world of abstract emotion and innate knowing. So perception happens in the mind, and when we can get these two worlds coming together, that is where success happens also, because you intuitively have a sense of direction of what is wise, but you also, take your brain with you, where you're strategic in how you go about that with the doing part of it. So yeah, we have some anatomy to go with, which is the conscious awareness, brain function, mind function, surface of the mind, which is where you receive the life experience, and also dysfunction. Dysfunction, as I alluded to earlier, is based on all the stress that we've had in life, and when we've internalized fear or we've internalized belief systems that have now become part of our operational manual that run with little or no awareness. So that is what most of us have, or all of us have in common, is that we have, just think of how many times you've been taught wrong in your life, or how many times you didn't understand something and just moved on, or someone said something and it affected you and you just moved on and internalized it. And now what happens with that energy, it compartmentalizes within the Keely and forms as these emotional buttons or emotional triggers that people can access and control your behavior. So now your performance is compromised, and certainly your state of mind is as well. So the practices and the Keely meditation is about understanding how the mind works, and then giving you a technique where you can start to empty the mind of things that don't need to be there, misunderstandings, non-understandings, unrealistic fears, etc., so that all that is left is awareness, and awareness becomes your guide, not fear.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. So I'm curious, was there a particular path that sort of led you to Keely? I mean, were you, was there a particular, moment or point in your life where it became necessary for you personally to have to, or to want to discover this for yourself?
It was probably more curiosity. Like if you look, we tend to learn via suffering a lot of the time. Like something doesn't work, and then you got to look at it because it didn't work.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, like people can get very stressed, and then they have to look for a coach or a mentor to help them with their stress or their anxiety or their depression or whatever it is. But for me, while I had some of that, most of the biggest drive for me was curiosity. In my early days of being a professional surfer myself and then coaching at that elite level, I always innately knew that the mind was the biggest influencer on performance by far and away. For the most part, if someone makes a mistake, technically it's really a mental mistake, I started to realize, because they were just rushing, or they were surfing from fear, or they were, I don't know, impatient, or they were all mental things. So I started to realize these are mental problems, not technical ones, because I'm teaching the technique and they're not changing. So I began to look deeply into meditation, and I started to study more and more. And keep in mind, I'm sort of unique in that way. I was always attracted to, like more spiritual books or more, psychological themes, even as a teenager. And during those Rick Curl days when I was coaching Mick and the rest of them, Taylor Knox joined the team, and he was the one that introduced me to Keely meditation around 12 or 13 years ago. And I'd seen so much of what else was out there in terms of a psychological traditional approach, breathing exercises associated with meditation, with yoga and many other things. And this just gave me such a more simple understanding of the mind, and a very simple way to start to train it and to answer all these questions that I had. So, yeah, I began to do my practice, and I started to kick goals straight away, and was starting to have realizations around, I feel like I'm living their life more than my own when I was on tour. And so I decided to quit, and I wanted to study more deeply the mind and meditation, and because to me, it's much easier to master, a reentry or a cutback or a P&L statement or things like that. But to master life and master ourselves, to me, that's the big challenge and the big goal. And so I wanted to do extra time on that. And my mentor at the time, who's the founder of the Keely, Ron Rathman, his name is, I was chatting with him and was, suggesting I feel like I want to do a course, or I want to, deep dive more into the mind. And he said, well, you're doing that right now. And the ultimate form of psychology isn't what you read in a book. It's in understanding your own mind. And you do that when you're alone. So I started to spend a lot of time alone. I went into the national park by myself, just close to where I live in Sydney, and spent hours a day, like 4 or 5 years. I went into the national park by myself every day and started to go inwards, not just outwards, to understand the human condition and understand why it is that we can hold ourselves back, and why we block ourselves, and where fear comes from, and why it happens, and how ego can get in the way, and how do we become more aware. All these questions that I had, but just hadn't put the time into it. I just made that a priority, and just went, everything else is secondary. And if I'm ever going to teach this one day, which was sort of on my pathway, but I wasn't thinking about too deeply then, first I need to understand it. So I just set about understanding it. And, I did the time, I guess you could say. I mean, that's spent that much time by themselves trying to understand life. And I mean, I'm a bit of a geek with performance and physical health. I just am. I find it so fascinating, and I just love it, so that was always the easier part for me. And marrying that up with an understanding of the mind, it helped me immensely. Like, my life is just way beyond what I thought was possible in terms of happiness and enjoyment and contentment. And so that's what I'm trying to bring, to my clients is not only a good understanding of performance, so, they can do very well in their careers, but, really enjoy their life and experience happiness and freedom of mind, and not be burdened by stress and any previous experience that is holding them back.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm curious, did you get answers to the questions that you were looking for?
I still have many more, but absolutely.
Yeah.
And absolutely. Like, ask whatever you want. I feel my promise to my clients is always, if I don't know, I'm not going to say, because I've been taught wrong so many times before in my life, and you have to undo that.
Yeah.
Like, if you've been taught wrong, it's sort of a bad thing. Like, if people don't know, they really shouldn't say. But we don't live in that world, do we? Everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's thinking out loud, and they don't realize that they're actually, a lot of the time, just confusing people. So yeah, we need time to understand these experiences. So even though, like, I'm sort of talking at a reasonable pace with you right now, I highly recommend that all the people listening to this just press pause, here and there, and just ponder on some of these things that we're discussing. And I hope that you see them as important things. I hope they resonate in your mind, and that you look at them, because just remembering them doesn't mean that much. It'll fade away, but what we're looking for is a connection to understanding, and that is an individual connection. And that's the importance of spending some time alone, is that you start to make sense of your own experience of life, and you connect the dots, and this understanding is what should be really leading your pathway, not the misunderstanding. So yeah, do some time in understanding, and that's how we grow. Because I mean, the physical body, it needs sunlight and oxygen and minerals from food to grow and repair, but our spirit needs experience. So we need to have experiences to grow, but we need to pay attention to them and learn from them. Otherwise we tend to repeat them, and we need the wisdom and the awareness to know what experiences that are important for us to grow, where it's not distracted by just greed, or by getting attention from someone, or looking like a great person. It's more about what is most important in terms of what is it I really want to experience in life. And I think that's always a good thing for people to come back to when they're confused about direction, when they're confused about anything in life, is just come back to that simplicity. Is what is it I would really like to experience? And there should be a strong connection to that, and just go forth and start to realize any blocks along the way, and deal with your blocks, and then you'll just get more and more momentum moving forward as you become more aware and less fearful.
So I wonder, like the answer to, what is it that I would really like to experience in life? Is the answer to that normally a feeling?
Yes, well done, John. Straight to the top of the class. Well, it's the doing is always secondary, right? Because you do it, like someone winning a trophy or whatever, and sometimes they might even say it felt hollow, because it's a feeling. Like, you're exactly right. Look very closely at what you're looking for in life. It's a feeling. It's a state of mind.
Yeah.
So you try to pick goals, and you try to pick a doing that create a beautiful state of mind, that turn you into the person that you really want to become. Because at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy. They want to be free. They want to be healthy. They don't want to feel stressed. They don't want to be a burden to themselves or to the world. So at what point do we stop blaming the world, or we stop being distracted, because it's much easier to look at Instagram than to look at your own shit, and start, enlightening ourselves. But yes, absolutely right. What you're looking for is a feeling. So that means you need to start developing your relationship with feeling, not just thinking. And you'll see that the thinking process and fear and dysfunction is the biggest distraction to that. People have a very weak connection to feeling. So their immune system runs weak, their awareness can run a little weak. And this is part of what the Keely helps with, is it develops a greater connection to feeling and to emotion, because we feel what we know, we think what we don't know. But most people are still living very heady lives, and in the comparison process, and very competitive if it's coming from that fear, instinctual ego response. And so that's why the first lesson with the Keely is really become consciously aware, so what you're setting into motion. Because if, like I said to a footy team recently, if you really knew what you were doing, imagine how many things you wouldn't have done in life.
I love that.
So let's simplify and just become more aware, and that means you'll catch yourself before you say something that might be a bit careless. You'll go forth if what you're about
a lot of people could benefit from that one.
I know, that's a press pause moment, isn't it? But you can't just say these things. You've got to earn them. It's sort of like you can't say the importance of nutrition or physical health or sleep without giving people a way to evolve it. So this is all just information right now, and I hope it inspires people's minds to do something more. to actually develop themselves and to develop their mind.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love most about your story is that you pretty much worked it out for yourself by
There's
the
no other
sounds.
way.
You had someone to help you with the Keeley framework and get good at that. But spending hours in the national forest and just becoming mindful of and the answers to all the questions that you were looking for, rather than doing what most people do and just devouring. I mean, I'm looking at my office at the moment. There are literally hundreds of books in here. And you've just gone, I think I might just go into the forest and work this stuff out. I love that.
I'd been taught wrong so many times, and I was reading these books, and I actually didn't agree with a lot of it. A lot of it innately just felt like, I'm not sure about this. And I had already had a fairly deep sense myself from right or wrong, and I just decided, and with the help of my mentor, who would always, not once has he ever told me how to live, but he's asked me some amazing questions and helped me understand for myself, because that is the only way. I asked him many questions, but didn't mean I understood it straight away, even though he might have explained it correctly. I would need to go and ponder that. I would need to go and connect with that myself, and I would, and then more questions would come. And yeah, I mean, I felt like that for a long time. It took me many years before I guess had the courage to do it, to quit a job.
Yeah.
It was pretty ballsy, particularly for people. It was such an amazing job. And I just had this strong urge mentally.
Oh man, it takes a stack of courage. How old were you at that point?
I think I was like 30.
So you would have been married. You might have had kids already.
No, it was pre that. So hence I could spend all that time. I didn't have a mortgage or kids to attend to. I mean, I still go up the national park. I was there yesterday, but once, maybe twice a week. But in those days, I was transitioning from one career into the next, and while my next career was building momentum, and I wasn't forcing it or rushing it, I was just doing more time with me, and that, because I didn't really know where it was going to. Like many times in life, let's be honest, we don't have a crystal ball, but I feel like if you're clear with yourself and you're clear with the next step, that's amazing. That's a great starting point. And if you keep being clear with the next step, then it always leads you on your pathway. And as it turns out, my pathway was teaching at that high level. And because I did all this time in understanding it myself first.
Yeah. And, I mean, it would have been an awesome job. And I always take my hat off to people that, that can make it, the transition to jump off a good situation into one that is perhaps not quite as guaranteed. I mean, I've made that transition a couple of times in my life, and it's bloody scary, I reckon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyone who makes a big career change, especially from a salaried position into their own business, it's I always just take my hat off to those type of people. But for you, to go from that to be following your to have faith that what you were doing was going to lead you somewhere, that was going to be take you to somewhere that was on purpose and that was going to take you somewhere good. I think that's it's pretty ballsy. So I love that about your journey. So not quite sure whether my next question's quite as relevant, because I was going to ask you, what would be the sort of 3 favorite books, the books that either you've given away, recommended, read yourself, which ones come to mind?
I devour books. So I feel like it's important. Like I have my own view, and of course that's been a bit of a message to this whole interview. But I've enjoyed many books. I mean, I've read maybe 4 already this year. So I go through quite a lot of books. In terms of ones that have had the most impact, like for people that want to look at Keeley stuff, like a really good starting point would just be the yellow book, Troubleshooting the Mind. That is just a basic principles book on how to do the practice and the basic principles of the mind that I alluded to earlier. But in terms of impact on me, there's another book that Ron wrote called The Keeley, An Understanding of the Psychology of Spirituality. To me, that probably had the most impact of all the Keeley books because he's written 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely on the list. Other books, recently I enjoyed a book I read a couple of years ago, Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina. I found very practical and very easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good one that definitely had a practicality in performance and living. Recently, I just read The Art of Learning, which I found quite interesting. Josh.
I've read that. Waitskin. Yeah,
the chess player. There's some good stuff in there for sure. I also read Jordan S. Peterson's The 12 Rules of Life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, anything philosophical I really enjoy because I feel like I have enough strength of mind where I'm not pulled away from my own view of life, but I really like people that ask good questions of life.
Yeah.
And even if I don't always agree with their answers, they're just great questions and they make you ponder.
Yeah.
To me, philosophy is just the art of living, and I admire people that study that, and he's certainly one that has, and so that was interesting. There's 3.
Cool. That's actually 4, which is good. Maybe a couple more than that. So yeah, no, that's awesome.
Bonus round.
Yeah, bonus round. Cool. So if people are interested in finding out more about how they, finding out more about what you do or how they could potentially work with you, what would you recommend as a good first step?
They can check out my website, mattgriggs.com.au, and on that is a lot of who I am and what I'm about and what I do and some of the offerings, which is everything from one-on-one coaching to keynotes, workshops, and we do these tours, Nature of Success tours with Taylor Knox, who's 20 years experience with the Keeley and an iconic pro surfer. So we go surfing and teach the Keeley and performance things. So all that is on my website, and then they can just reach out via email is probably my preferred method of communication. And we can talk on the phone to make sure there's a connection if they want to do the course, the 10-session course, which is what I start people with. We can talk and just see if there's a connection. I get an understanding of where they're at and how I could help. And that would be the best way to have a look at me and if they want to reach out.
Perfect, mate. That's awesome. Very good, mate. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I think that what you've shared is going to be, it's particularly topical for what's happening in our world at the moment. But yeah, I love the story, and I think it's going to mean a lot for the guys who are going to be listening. So, mate, thanks again, and good to catch up with you.
Mate, absolutely. Yeah, stay strong, everyone.
Yeah,
physically
absolutely.
And mentally. Don't be infected by fear.
No, exactly. Awesome. Cheers, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having
me. You've been listening to Master Dealmaker's Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies to maximize your sales process with new episodes every week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive free no-fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.